All right, so let's try some more op art, y'all. So for this one, I'm going to use markers. If you don't have markers, crayons, colored pencils will definitely work as well. So any colored materials you have, but I'm going to use pencil. Or I'm sorry, not pencil. I'm going to use markers. I'm going to need markers. I'm going to need a piece of paper. And of course, my handy dandy pencil. A straight edge is something else that you're going to need. So remember when we chatted about how you could use a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can use like the edge of a book or the edge of a folder, whatever it is you have, okay? So let's get started. Remember when I'm doing these demos that I'm going to keep working through all the steps, one right after another. And I know that a lot of times we can't keep up. So that is the awesome thing about the pause button. So if you need to pause this as I'm working, definitely just pause it, finish the step, and then hit play when you're ready to do the next step. So first things first, as best as you can, find the middle of your paper and make a little dot at the very center of your paper. And then you're going to draw a straight line from that dot to each corner. So I'm going to use my ruler. If again, you could use anything with a straight edge on it. And I'm just going to draw a line from that dot out into each of those corners. All right. When I'm done with those lines, I have 4 sections on my paper, and in each of those sections, I'm going to add 2 additional lines. So I'm going to try to space them evenly as possible, but I'm going to start at the center and add 1 and 2 lines. And I'm going to do that in every section, 2 lines in each one. So I'm going through and trying to make them even, but of course, we know that they might not be perfect, and that is okay. But again, adding 2 lines to each section, and these lines are coming from the center of my paper, that dot that we created, and going all the way off of the paper. So at that point, this is what mine will look like, okay? All right. Now, do you guys remember that at the beginning, we had 4 original lines that went right up to the edges? Now, I'm going to take my black marker, but if you are using crayons or colored pencils, just whatever, just a black. And I'm going to do the lines that are coming from the corners to the center. And this is just going to help me for my next step. And so it will make more sense why I'm doing this when you see the next thing that I'm doing. But I'm only outlining just the lines that are going to the corners of my paper. Let me go ahead and put this up a little farther. So you can see I outlined, and again to the corner, and last to the corner. Now this is really going to help me out for my next step because I'm going to be adding some horizontal lines to this section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on up to the top of my paper, and I'm going to move my ruler down just a little bit, and I'm going to make a line across. Now look about how much space is right here. I'm going to draw another line, but this time I'm going to try to make the next shape a little bit smaller. And you'll notice I'm only going from one black line to the other black line. Now I'm going to keep going until I get to the very center, but each time I'm going to be making those lines a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and they're just going to keep going again, smaller and smaller until the very center. So do you guys know why we're making them smaller and smaller as we go? We're making them smaller and smaller as we go because as items get smaller, as things get farther away from us, guess what? They actually start getting smaller and smaller. I'm going to freehand the rest of mine. So as you can see, it starts out, they're really big because these squares are the closest to us. And as I get farther away, they're going to get smaller and smaller. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my paper and I'm going to do the exact same thing. But the only difference is I'm going to pay attention to where these lines over here are so I can line up my straight edge with where the last line ended. So I'll start here and just keep going down, lining up with the lines that I created last time. So if I move this, can you see how they make an L shape over here all the way down? Boop, 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 boop. And so I'm going to just keep on going and going and going. And I'm going to keep going until they're all the way down to the bottom. Again, just lining them up with those lines from the first section. And again, they're getting smaller and smaller as they go. And I like to just freehand the rest of them because I think it's just easier. Boop, 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 boop. Making sure that they line up with each one because we're going to do you guessed it, a checkerboard pattern. But can you already see that illusion where it looks like it's getting smaller and smaller? So now I'm going to go ahead and do these last two sections. Now when you get to this last section, you're going to have to connect the two together. So I'm connecting these two together. And my lines are not perfect. It's not a huge deal, but I am making sure that it connects across. One more and two more. And since I didn't measure these, some of my lines in this last section are a little bit unstraight, but I'm cool with it. So at this point, I'm going to start at one of these edges and I'm going to be doing a checkerboard pattern with my marker. So I'm going to go ahead, I have my black marker, that's the color that I'm choosing to use, and I'm going to neatly start filling these in. I like to trace mine first, and then with these markers, awesome, if you use the side, you get a nice broad stroke, and it takes a lot less time than if you go so using the side makes it a lot neater and makes it go a lot quicker. So if you wanted to try that out, if you're using markers, definitely worth a shot. And then I skip one to the checkerboard and then go on to the next one. And I'm just going to repeat this process through this whole first section before I move on to the next. As you can see, I finished my first section, so when I move on to the next one, I'm going to continue that checkerboard pattern. So since I have this one black, that one will stay white. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the center section, fill that in completely with my marker, and then just continue this process through this next section. And now I have my first two sections done. You can already see that illusion with my hallway. I'm loving it so far. And so I'm going to rotate again and go to the next section. We have white here, so of course we'll have black here. And we're going to go ahead and start that checkerboard pattern here now in this next section, just like we've been doing this whole entire time. And just going on to the next one. Again, just doing one section at a time. It really makes everything a little bit more manageable and helps that we don't get messed up, because you really have to keep really close eye on it, especially when you get down to these small ones. And I'm sure by this point, you guys have definitely realized that as well, that it can get really frustrating when you're down there, right? And keeping track. Let me tell you a little secret. When things get farther away in your artwork, they get harder to see. So if it gets a little bit wonky in here, it's not going to make a big difference. So if there's like a little bit too much color, or you get one or two blocks the same when it gets really close to the center, you're really not going to be able to notice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish up this next section. And we're in the home stretch, y'all. I got one more section left. So I'm going to go ahead again. We're going to skip. We have black here, so that'll be white. So I'm going to go ahead and do my center section. I really like to trace. I think it helps me keep everything inside the shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and trace around that, and then again using the side of my marker to fill those in. I'm pretty excited to be on my last section. A lot of optical illusion or op art, it is a tedious process. And what tedious means is it takes a while. It's not necessarily hard, but I know that it is time consuming, isn't it? So even though we really want to get done and you might get tempted to rush, really try your best to take your time, because the nice and neat optical illusions are going to have a much better illusion. Alright, and I just have a little bit left. You can kind of see I made a mistake right here, so I had to go in with some white out. But I'm still going. I'm not letting that get to me. So I'm going to finish this up. We're almost done. And there we go. So I have my illusion. I have everything's getting smaller as it gets away from us. That's what's creating that illusion, that repetition of getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's helping create that illusion that we're going down a hallway that's getting smaller and smaller. If you want it to be done now with the black and white or the one color, you can. Or if you'd like, you can also go in with a different color to color in that secondary block. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. If you do end up finishing this, I would, oh my gosh, absolutely love to see it during our next art club meeting. So definitely keep that safe so I can see what you guys got going on. I'm so sorry that I wasn't here today, but I hope you followed along in the tutorials with me and hope that you had a really good time with this optical illusion. Bye, friends.